Welcome to Keen on Green with Evan Rigsby, the podcast that dives deep into the world of environmental consulting from a multitude of perspectives. Join your host, Evan Rigsby, as he explores the intricate challenges and innovative solutions within the environmental sector.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Keen on Green, the podcast servicing the environmental community. Today is a big time episode, and today Rich Cartwright is joining the show. For a little bit about Rich, Rich has an MBA in Operations Management from Indiana University and a BES in Chemical Engineering from BYU. He's an internationally recognized LinkedIn blogger on hazardous materials management topics. If you haven't heard about him, go on LinkedIn now and follow him. Now, a little bit more about Rich. Mr. Cartwright is a past president of the Alliance of Hazardous Materials Professionals, also known as AHMP, and he is a recipient of the prestigious Pete Cook Founders Award for Distinguished Lifetime Leadership, dedicated service, and professional achievement within the hazardous materials management profession. Currently, he provides volunteer service as an AHMP Global Goodwill Ambassador and as an AEHS Foundation Ambassador. Lastly, I consider him a good friend. And with that said, Rich, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We've become friends. We just met a month ago, but it's like we've known each other. We've, followed each other's footsteps by LinkedIn, but also I knew your dad, and I spent a lot of time with your dad, and I would help him out. And every so often he would go to the dessert deli place, and he would send me a package, edible desserts. That's what it was. And they were delicious. And I would think of him, and I'd try to help him out.
Absolutely. Seriously, this is a really special episode having you on. Guys, today we're going to be covering a little bit about Rich's history. We're going to talk about his thoughts on the industry, and stay tuned. We got a lot of stuff to go over. So I guess with that said, Rich, for those who haven't heard of you yet, obviously you've had a very rich history, and especially with what you do now and mentoring a lot of students. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started? Because one of the stories that, always sticks in the back of my head is what you were just telling me a while back with the chemistry set, as a kid. And,
yes.
Can you share that with everybody?
All right, let's go to that. All right. I'm a CODA, C-O-D-A, child of deaf adults. Okay. My parents were both deaf. My first language is talking with my hands. Okay. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that kind of stuff. And so I was the oldest of 4 children, so I didn't talk, but mom and dad made it. He was nonverbal. He made it to 8th grade, and then mom made it to 10th grade, but they wanted me to go to college. And actually the 4 of us in my family, all of us have master's degrees. We all went to college, but they also said, you're paying for it. So I told my mom and dad that my passion was chemistry. So at the age of 11, they built me a chemistry laboratory. And so dad had his workshop down in the basement, and then I had mine. And these were like back then, like a man cave. And I got the chemistry because I was into Boy Scouts. And they had a magazine called Boy's Life, and if you sold so many, Christmas cards and other Easter cards and whatever, you got a chemistry set. And I bought like 2 or 3 of them. And I had a great time of doing things. So it was better living through chemistry. At the time of 1957, when I was 11 years of age, that what happened was that the Russians had put Sputnik in space. And that just shook the fear into everybody's world. Because if we knew that they could put a Sputnik out in outer space, which we could not reach, okay, that they could drop a bomb on us. And so immediately what happened was anybody that had any background or interest in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, okay, and back then I had like a fantastic memory. I just memorized everything, the engineering formulas, the math formulas, my paper route. I didn't have to keep records because I just knew, and also history, but I loved history. But I knew that if I got into STEM, I could get a job. It's hard to get a job as a history professor. That's fun. And that's why today I blog on history, and I visit all these historical sites, and I blog that again. But anyway, going back to it, what happened was that I had my laboratory, and one of the things that I was trying to do was generate hydrogen, because I looked at the periodic table, and on the periodic table next to hydrogen was helium. And if somehow I could transform the hydrogen to the next block on the periodic table to helium, okay, then what I wanted to do was to start inhaling the helium, okay? You don't want to inhale hydrogen because that could be explosive. But helium is inert, and helium is what they use to, for Halloween and birthdays, for birthday balloons, that kind of stuff. And I wanted to manufacture my own helium. And the reason that I wanted to is back in 1957, the hottest songs out there were by Frankie Valli. He's now 90 years of age, and he's still performing. Wow. He is my hero, Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. And I figured that if I could manufacture my own helium, okay, and if I could inhale that, all the girls would love me, okay? Because I could hit all the high notes. This kind of stuff. So that's how I got into that, rocketry and explosives and all that kind of stuff, and the beginning of hazardous materials management. I do admit that at the age of 11, I did have an accident in the laboratory. Safety is first, okay? And I had a runaway reaction. I was reacting three things together. Let's see, I was reacting, sulfur, saltpeter, and lampblack. Do you have any clue what that is?
No.
Sulfur, lampblack. Okay. It's gunpowder. Gunpowder had been generated by the Chinese, and they use it mostly for fireworks and, ceremonial purposes and eternal life and, that kind of stuff. But I had a runaway reaction and it exploded on me. Fortunately, I was wearing PPE, meaning glasses. Okay. And I had a way to douse it, to smother it, to capture it. But my entire basement filled up with smoke. And my parents, who are deaf, did not hear it. But the smoke, they came down and they said in the sign, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What'd you do?" Here's their child prodigy, having shaken the whole house to its rafters. Yeah, but that's how I started. Better living through chemistry. Go ahead.
No, I love it. So, needless to say, guys, in his youth, Rich was a mad scientist.
I've become more calm, maybe exciting. And I've been more aware of not just hazard materials management, but environmental health and safety, and safety first. Even before having a conference call, many times we would have a safety meeting, type of thing. And even now at my age now that we go on in a conference call, we have to break in 45 minutes because otherwise our joints get too stiff. We can't walk upright and straight. That's a safety thing, So you have to take care of yourself. Yeah. And that's how I do it. So I still have the energy, but I have to do it in short spurts.
So kind of jumping forward to today, and, can you, highlight a little bit of what you've done since then throughout your longstanding career? And then off of that, I think one thing that's been really special about you is that you have been a very spoken member of the community.
Oh, yeah.
You spend your time talking with students. You spend your time going to events and really, speaking about this topic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, my whole focus when I was 11 was hazardous materials management. But then where the real value comes at is how that hazardous materials management applies to environmental health and safety. So I got first involved in environmental on the original Earth Day. On April 22nd, 1970, I was in Berkeley, California. We used to call it Berkeley, California, because it was quite a place back in the 70s. Okay, it was rocking, and I was a chemical engineer. Better living through chemistry, and the reason why it was April 22nd, and a lot of people thought that Earth Day was a communist plot. That it was a green movement, but green not green like you talk about green, keen and green and sustainability, but green is in communism, because April 22nd is Lenin's birthday under the old Russian Gregorian calendar. And people would come up to me in Berkeley and they would know that I was a chemical engineer. This is Earth Day. You're a chemical engineer. You're the enemy. No! And what we've learned, the most important thing is that the original CHMM, and by the way, certified hazard materials managers, they're up to like 20, 25,000 of them over the years, okay? I have one of the low numbers. I'd like to tell people tongue-in-cheek it's 007. It's not that low, but it's a low number because I've been, way back when. And what uncertified hazard materials management, the key thing is 001, the original historical manager, was this gentleman named Paracelsus. Paracelsus was the original godfather of hazard materials management. And he said the most important phrase, it's the dose that makes the poison. He figured out that everything was hazardous. And it took me a long time, and I would teach it again and again. I taught for 14 years at UCLA. I would teach 3-day courses, the prep courses, and all that kind of stuff. But finally it came to me a couple of years ago when talking to some PhD chemists. The reason why he knew that everything was hazardous and poisonous and it depended upon the dose is that back then in 1492, that's when he lived, the 1500s, early 1500s, Christopher Columbus time. He was a Renaissance chemist. Back then when they were doing the chemistry, they didn't have instruments. Now we have like pH meters, we have Geiger counters, we have this and that. We have the frog detector for PIDs, FIDs, this kind of stuff. They were doing self-experimentation, okay? And that is that now we would use pH meter, we use litmus paper, but he was going there and he would go,
oh, no.
No, seriously. And the deal was, because there was no instrumentation, Yeah, it tastes like lemons. No, this is like, And he figured out there was too much. He's like, no. And then the other thing is, and I worked at Chemical Waste Management Research and Development in Chicago, and I worked with some old senior chemists that had worked with Fermi, Enrico Fermi, in the original University of Chicago project, that made the Manhattan Project, that built the bomb that we had to use to end the war, okay? That a lot of them, they would go there and they would teach me how to do correct olfactory chromatography. They would taste it and they would smell it, okay? And these old chemists had zero capacity of olfactory chromatography. They couldn't smell anything.
No.
Yeah, those were like dead. So that's what I learned. It's the dose that makes the poison. Very simply, like for example, like caffeine. Every so often I need a caffeine shot, and I'll have a Diet Coke or a Diet Pepsi, but when they ship, truckloads of caffeine to Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola, it's shipped as poison.
I didn't know that.
It is. It's the dose. It's the concentration. You're gonna. It's like sugar. Sugar is toxic. Okay. If you have diabetic tendencies, what I mean. Salt is a problem. Everything is, including dihydrogen monoxide. What is dihydrogen monoxide? I actually went to the Erie County Fair. I live in Buffalo, New York, and I was going through the county fair, and what happened was they were passing out these leaflets, and they wanted people to sign the petition to outlaw dihydrogen monoxide. Do you know what dihydrogen monoxide is? David, you had any chemistry? I'll help you. Dihydrogen, meaning two hydrogens, H2. Monoxide, one oxygen. Two hydrogens, one oxygen is H2O. It's water. Or where I grew up in Yonkers, it's water. All right. So you need a certain amount of water. Like for me to keep talking, I drink my tea.
Yep.
A little bit of caffeine, my dihydrogen monoxide. Okay. But again, if you have too much water, okay, it's a flood. Like Spain just recently, they had a year's worth of rain in their villages in Valencia in 8 hours.
Oh, my God.
Oh, it's like destroyed. It's on the Weather Channel. Okay, yeah. Okay, it's just amazing. And like we have hurricanes, and we have hurricanes that like just sit and they just pour rain. It's too much or too little. So what we have to do as hazard materials managers, work with the environmental health and safety people, that we have to find the Goldilocks. It's just right. Not too much, not too little. Okay?
So question on that there.
Go ahead.
And, you talk about how in the early days they were, you're joking around licking and testing and all
They did.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. By today's standards and a lot of the stuff that you've been speaking for years and advocating, how have you seen, in your opinion, the industry improve, like it mature?
Well, the biggest one of all, technology-wise, is that we used to go out and we do sampling. Okay.
Yep.
And there weren't a lot of things that you could use some Draeger tubes and you had some litmus paper, but usually you would take a sampler and you send it to a laboratory and you get the results back, in the mail.
Yep.
Now we can email, we can text message, so we live in instant communication. Okay. So what the biggest change is that now we have all of these instruments, membrane interface probes and high resolution site characterization and the instrumentation. We get results and it's instant. It's like this conversation right now. Mm-hmm. You actually are 400 miles away from me, okay? But we're like together. But we bonded together and we're walking each other's foot and it's instant. It's like now. That's the deal. That's been the biggest and also like a gas chromatograph. I go back to engineering school. I used to make my own gas chromatographs. We get these tubes of aluminum and we pack them with molecular sieve material to work it, and then we coil them up, and then we'd run the hydrogen through, or actually the helium, because we had bottles of that. I wasn't able to transform it. It turns out you can't make hydrogen into helium by chemistry. You have to do it by radiation and radioactivity, because you got to change the number of protons, and I couldn't do that. Okay. The sun can. That's what it does. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So here's something off of what you said, and as I've kind of said in the past, a decent amount of our listeners for this show are people who are in high school, in college, aspiring to get in the field. And I've had so many people message me say, Evan, I'm interested in this. I'm just confused. I don't know what it's like. I want, from your perspective, you've done a phenomenal job, especially for the younger population, in showing what this field does, where it's going, motivating people to really be that next generation coming in, and you've been an outspoken leader. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what you've been doing, because I think it's just incredible the work that you've been putting in, even volunteering.
Okay. Well, what I would encourage the young folks is to take as many science, technology, engineering, math courses wherever they're at. My old high school was, we slugged through 4 years of high school. Well, now a lot of those same students, and this is Roosevelt High School in Yonkers, New York. Not a magnet school, but it's on the verge of being now. But you can take a lot of advanced placement courses, and also you can get leave the school and by transportation you can go to university, or you can actually take the courses online. They're all right there, and then your chemistry professor can help you out a little bit and have the support network. So the most important thing is probably to find a mentor, and if you can't find a mentor, there's me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. But obviously, if you have a mentor, like mom and dad, or an uncle, or somebody in the family that can help you. In my case, mom and dad couldn't help me. Dad made it to 8th grade, and mom made it to 11th, and they can only just do so much. So you want to find a mentor and get involved in the communities and get into, if they have a student chapter. The big thing now in high schools is like the robot club. What I mean? We didn't have robots back then. That most people want to do exciting things, like the dance club and this and that. And I remember my friend and I, we wanted to be in the math club. Nobody came, just 2 or 3 of us, and then let's be in the astronomy club, because the Sputnik, and we could see the stars, right. And we'd watch the Sputnik go over and stuff like that. And so we start getting into it. So again, join. And do things and practice. And then now with the internet, I mean, I remember as a kid growing up, again, mom and dad, they basically the rule was, if I was studying, because they wanted me to go to college, but I also had to work and pay for it. But as long as I was studying and reading, okay, I didn't have to do chores, okay? So they bought me an encyclopedia. And I realized after years when I went to clean out their house, I had read it from A to Z, the entire Compton encyclopedia.
Wow.
I mean, I was a nerd. I was a geek. Okay. But you want to, again, be the Goldilocks. You don't want to be just a pure geek. You want to have the social interaction. And that's what I learned to do. For years, I thought because I was deaf and I was a coda, I was an introvert. But then later, I found out that I was an extrovert.
So, you talk about that, and one of the things that I've had questions asked, not even just young people, I've even asked, seasoned people reach out to me, is they go, for today's age, what are some of the trends that you're seeing? What are some of the things that interest you? What are some of the groups? You talk about groups out there. What are things that people can do today that would put them in a better position of, from a social perspective, getting connected with people?
Well, again, like I said, some type of where you have a passion and go with like-minded people. The robots, I'll go to the Science Museum. I was watching the other day, before COVID, 4 years ago, okay? I was watching this robot shooting foul shots and making every single one, and meet with other people. Yeah, or the chemistry club and working, with rocketry or now, computers, and just learning how to do things together. And you could do that online. You could do it, face to face. Obviously, that in your local community, doing face to face is extremely valuable. What I would encourage them is to get involved with the Alliance of Hazardous Materials Professionals. They're very active in student chapters. Their affiliate organization, the Institute of Hazardous Materials Management, they actually have a credential now that it's a student CHMM credential. That it gives you a leg up. That as a student, you basically you read their textbook. It's a 300-page textbook, but for me, reading is like that's everything. And you can get an online version. It's a PDF file you put on your tablet or laptop. But read that and enrich yourself and learn about what's out there. And if you have those skills become value added, and that people will pay money for that. At my age, and I'm now 78, that I have a practice that I want to learn something new every single day. So like today, this is the first time, I've been on a lot of seminars, but this is the first time I've been on a podcast, and that I'm the featured person on the podcast. Normally I'm the host, but hey, this is a new experience, and this is wonderful. So go ahead.
I'm glad. And, one of the things, Rich, off of that is you have always been a man of stories and a man of experiences. So where I want to get at with this, you talk about a lot of students who have read up on this and even seasoned professionals, but then it's what you do with it and,
right.
And stuff. So throughout your career, I guess any, story that kind of comes to the top of your mind, maybe it was a project that you were really excited to be part of, or maybe something that came up, but, anything that you want to share that was a really special moment career-wise using a lot of these principles.
Okay. Something I learned, as a kid, back when I was a kid, we didn't have, football, pee-wee softball, football, we didn't have, hockey leagues, things like that. It was baseball, and there were two seasons, baseball and waiting for baseball. And we would play sandlot baseball. There were no referees, there were no scouts, there were no coaches or anything like that. And basically we would get together, and some kid, everybody line up, and then you pick who your team was. And I learned very early on that I wanted to be a leader, okay? And eventually I decided, just because I'm a chemical engineer, but I wanted to learn leadership and management skills. I got an MBA, a Master's in Business Administration, focused on operations management and logistics, and eventually into the School of Public Environmental Affairs, into hazardous materials management, and further pursuing that and combining my environmental engineering and chemical engineering. In fact, I took chemical engineering before they even invented environmental engineering. There was none at that time. But what you want to do is, if you join any of these different clubs and societies, you want to volunteer, okay? That's the secret to success. And you can practice. See, it's a little hard to do that at work because everybody else has seniority. But in a volunteer organization, they need people to get involved. So say, hey, I'll put the list together. I'll keep track of the members, or I'll help with the program, or I'll set up the chairs, or whatever it is. Volunteer. And so what I did was eventually, I founded the second CHMM chapter. It was in Chicago. The first one was in Indiana, in Indianapolis, and that eventually they had at the high water mark 52 different chapters, of which 25 I had helped to found.
Wow.
Yeah, and I became national president. And so that's a way of expressing yourself, and you can learn by books, but you can also learn by just doing. So by doing those things, and then also, what we're also finding out now, when I went to college, I started out at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute of Troy, New York, okay? And I visited on my way home from the AHS UMass conference, and I hadn't been there for 60 years, and I got to see it, and I had a VIP tour because they found out that I was an alumnus, and and there was this $90 million IBM super magnet computer that it would just crunch numbers, and it operated at 0.05 degrees Kelvin. It's almost absolute zero. Okay. So I went there, and you get involved in the technology, but work with people and groups. And one of the things is that in engineering, a lot of times you work by yourself, but when you work in the business school, that you're in teams. And even when we first started here, like, how do we get together and solve problems? We went to Microsoft Teams. Okay. And what you want to do, have a team, and one person on the team might be an engineer, one's a math major, one's an IT person, one's a health and safety person, one's a chemist, one's a geologist, and you have teams working together and learning how to be part of a team first. That's the key that I would say. The other thing is, when I went to Rensselaer, my tuition for the whole year was $1,500, okay, for the whole year. Yes. Now, it turns out now in graduate school, that you're paying $1,500 per credit hour. How can you afford this?
You're lucky.
Yeah. So the thing is, you could graduate from 4 years of college, and it'll cost you $250,000 to $500,000 to get through your master's and doctoral work. And you have all this debt. And so what I'm saying now is, go to your community college, get involved, take some internships and volunteer for things to help out. But also, what you want to do is get involved so that you can get the essence. And if you work with these professional societies such as AHS and AHMP and the American Society of Safety Professionals or the American Industrial Hygiene, they have open forums, and they want you to be involved in that. And they have certificate programs, and that colleges have gotten so expensive, and because now we've gone online, they have all these all these buildings that are out there, and they have all that debt. Okay. Whereas if you have a laptop, you can set up a course, and you're at University of Phoenix or even University of Massachusetts Global, it's there. And so my thing now is getting certificates in whatever niche you want to get into. And they're even having niches that are even for people with like 1 year of experience or even just 2 years of college, that you don't have to wait until you have a 4-year degree before you can get involved. I say do it now.
I love that. And, I think we have time for one more question. We have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
And, I really wanted to thank you for your time. Just open it up to you. And anything else that, for the listeners out there, whether it's through your career or something that's on your mind or the way you think the industry's heading, anything else you want to share with everybody?
Well, the key thing is that passion. I had married my daughter. I have a wonderful daughter. She's like 43 years of age, and she belongs to this company, and it's called Be Alive. And their whole mantra is to inspire and find people's passions, and also to explore. Okay. And so what I wanted to say is explore, try different things. It's like going to churches. Which church you want to join? I tried this one, or even like you go like cars, try this one, and then pick one that's you, that fits you and your personality, and that you can endure and want to do this with passion. In my case right now, it's LinkedIn. That LinkedIn, I found out, my boss actually came to me and he said, Richard, I'm going to tell you a story. There were two guys, they were actually equally identical. They were going to get hired by Google. And one was hired over the other because one was on LinkedIn and the other one was not. Okay, you need to get involved. So okay, and so I says, all right, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to do this every day. So I've done LinkedIn every single day since 2009. So what I did was I wrote a book, never published it, but it's available online, basically in snippets. Hazard materials management, 365 days a year. And so here, if I were to retire, and people have told me, Cartwright, if you retire, you're going to die in 60 or 90 days. But by me being never retiring, staying involved and being engaged and helping people and stuff like that, that's a stimulation. And that what you cherish the most, okay, is what we learned is called the teaching moment. If there's somebody that wants to learn, and you have a great example, just yourself, Evan, that you're wanting to learn. You're like a sponge. You're laughing at my jokes about the dihydrogen monoxide and the smelling and the olfactory chromatography, but there's certain essences here that we can distill, and finding that passion. In my daughter's case, I wanted her to get a job at 16 in the in the library because I love libraries and books. No, jobs have to be fun, okay, and make it fun. And you don't want to be in a job situation like I was working with my granddaughter. And it turns out she told me that she was working at a restaurant. Then eventually I found out it was actually Subway submarine shops, just assembling, sandwiches. But she's in a toxic environment and she's being abused and she was frustrated. And I finally explained to her, I used to teach to the garden club once a year. And I would talk to them about, and they were all against chemistry, okay? And I would tell them, like, you need, as a garden club, you need NPK. What is that? It's fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But again, not too much, because too much fertilizer is going to kill everything in your garden. If you have too little, it's not going to grow. So you have to find the Goldilocks. You got to find the right one. Then I learned from the garden club there's two things: weeds and flowers. Okay, the garden club told me there's no such thing as weeds. Really? Okay, no, weeds are flowers in the wrong garden. Okay. And so if you are a weed where you're at, and my granddaughter, she's 25 now, she's, Grandpa, I think I understand your story, that I'm a weed where I'm at. I need to change jobs and to get into a career and get some skills so that I don't work the rest of my life. And one of the things that I wanted to do, even when I worked, and I worked really hard as a teenager, and I was strong, back then, and I, physically fit, but that I wanted to, eventually my body would wear out. But as long as I kept my mind active and I was passionate, I could continue working forever, and that's what I plan to do here. So thank you, and God bless you.
I couldn't think of a better ending than that. Rich, thank you so much for being on. Guys, what I'm going to do is, in the description of this podcast, I'm going to link Rich's LinkedIn. If you guys want to get in contact, he talked a lot about mentorship, which I'm a wholehearted believer of. Rich is always there. He's one of the best in the industry. Please reach out. But with that said, Rich, thanks for being on today.
Vaya con Dios. Go with God.